Welcome to the Messy Middle Season 2, the season finale. I am your host, Jamila, and this season we have been having real conversations from women standing in the middle of a turning point, and at this point, it's been several points. Um, so today there's no short story. I'm just gonna get right into it, okay? I used to feel like the middle was temporary. I thought that it was something that you passed through on your way to some sort of clarity. Something, that was uncomfortable and maybe even painful, but still relatively short. I believed that if I stayed honest and compliant and, good, did the work and kept moving, I would eventually arrive somewhere that felt calm, felt settled, somewhere that made sense. Um, but the truth that I have had to sit with this season and in this season of my life is that the middle is actually longer than I thought, much longer than I anticipated, longer than anyone prepared me for, longer than the language we usually use to talk about stuff like change. It's longer than the patience that I thought I had. And, there's this quiet, expectation that once something breaks, like when a relationship ends or when your faith shifts, a life plan, falls apart, you'll grieve, you'll get it together, and you'll move on. That there is a before and after and a short, messy stretch in between. But what happens when that stretch keeps stretching, right? What happens when you're no longer in crisis, but you're not okay either? What happens when you've stopped bleeding, but the sore is still open and you still feel it? When people assume that you have adjusted, but internally you're still rearranging things every day. That's the part we don't talk about enough. The middle that doesn't announce itself. The middle where nothing is really falling apart in the moment, but nothing feels complete. Nothing feels finished. You wake up, you go to work, you show up for your responsibilities, you laugh when it's appropriate, you're functional. From the outside, it looks like life is moving forward. But inside, you're still kind of negotiating with what happened. You're still kind of rebooting your expectations. You're still learning how to live in a life that doesn't match what you actually plan for. And there's a particular loneliness in that. It's a loneliness that lives in that space because, people understand what emergencies are. They understand heartbreak in the moment. They understand the first few months of loss or transition. And, they bring food, maybe they check in, maybe they give you grace, maybe. But that long middle, that makes people uncomfortable. At some point, the support does fade. The questions do stop. The assumption becomes that you're fine now, or at least fine enough to not bring it up. And you start to wonder if you're doing something wrong. Why am I still here? Why am I still feeling this way? Why hasn't this resolved? Why don't I feel better yet? But consider that maybe the problem isn't you. Maybe the problem is the lie that the middle is supposed to be short. The middle is where you learn what you actually believe, not what you were taught to believe. It's where you realize which parts of your old life were holding you together and which parts were holding you back. It's where you discover how much of your identity was built like around things that are no longer true about you. That kind of unraveling doesn't happen quickly. It takes time to stop reaching for what's familiar when it no longer fits your life. It takes time to grieve a future that might not ever happen. It takes time to stop explaining yourself to people who don't live inside your body or your history, so they don't know what you're going through. And there's no clear marker for when you're done with all of that. No ceremony, no finish line, no moment where everything clicks and stays that way. Some days you might feel grounded. Some days you might feel exposed. Some days you might feel like you're finally making peace with things. And then the next day you realize there's another layer that you haven't even touched yet. That doesn't mean that you're stuck, though. It means you're living in reality, not some sort of transformation story. The middle will ask something different of you than beginnings or endings do. It asks you to tolerate ambiguity, to live without neat answers or clear answers, to let yourself be unfinished without turning that into a personal failure. And that's hard, especially for women who've been taught to be composed and resilient. I hate being called resilient. And, quietly competent, no matter what's really happening internally, especially for Black women who are often expected to absorb disruption without letting it show, to keep going, to stay strong, to make meaning out of pain before we've even had time to sit with it. But the middle doesn't respond to pressure. You can't really rush it without leaving parts of yourself behind. You can't perform your way through it. All you can do is keep showing up honestly without pretending you're further along than you are. There's nothing wrong with you if you are still figuring things out. There's nothing weak about needing more time. There's nothing shameful about living in a season that hasn't resolved yet. The middle being long does not mean that it's pointless. It means something real is happening slowly, quietly, underneath the surface. And maybe the most honest thing you could say right now isn't I'm healed or I'm moving on or I've got it figured out. Maybe it's simply this: I'm still here, I'm still becoming, and I'm allowing this to take as long as it takes. So if this season or just this episode found you in your own long middle, I hope it reminded you that you're not behind. Some chapters don't rush because they're doing deeper work. So thank you all for sitting in the messy middle with me this season. I will be back in the fall with another great season of topics. But until then, take care of yourselves and each other. See you guys next season.